Somebody was asking about criticisms of LTV, my Labour theory of value criticism. I mean, I remember some Marxists getting very angry about it, but by and large, they just don't seem to understand the point, which is that they don't have any causal evidence for the Labour theory of value, but they act like they do. I don't know. Do any of those videos actually provide causal evidence for the Labour theory of value or engage with that question properly? Or do they just do things like go, you haven't read enough Marx, and start like blabbering on about Marxist theory? And I also think there's a big thing where if you've got like a big video, and this goes for like all of my videos, if you've got like a big video like, and I'm trying to communicate to a public audience, many of whom might not have heard of theories of value, you know, you have to simplify in some respects, and you can't put every little bit of jargon and quote Marx endlessly, and you know, you've got to have fun examples, you've got to communicate things in a certain way, and Marxists are notorious for not being able to communicate their ideas. They're just like, oh, let's just read Capital, and it's like, no, people aren't going to do that, and they shouldn't have to do that to understand your ideas. So, you know, between sort of misunderstanding the target audience of my video and misunderstanding what causal evidence actually is, I'd say that about 90% of what Marxists might say about my video is completely wrong. But, you know, whatever. Maybe you disagree. Empirical evidence. Yeah, but, like, you can cite empirical evidence without it being good evidence, right? There's been, like, a causal revolution in quantitative statistics. Now, I want to be very clear. They're all still dead. Good. I want to be very clear that quantitative evidence is not the only type of evidence you can have. The problem is that Marxists provide data, graphs, like Paul Cockshott is the worst for this. He provides graphs of like correlations between hours of labor and industry output, just a simple correlation. And it's like, I'm sorry, to be that guy, correlation doesn't equal causation. And there's just like a very clear omitted variable in that analysis, which is industry size, right? Industry size drives both the number of labours and the amount of output in a given industry. So you can't say that's proof of the Labour theory of value. Tendency of the rate of profit to fall. Again, Marxists seem to think that like just eyeballing a graph and just being like, oh yeah, this aggregate construct that we created sort of seems to go down, therefore the Labour theory of value. It's like, no, you have to establish, you know, is the finding robust to different measures? Is it statistically significant, the decline? Have you controlled for other factors, including Marx's own countervailing tendencies? Have you done a causal research design? And the answer to those questions 9 times out of 10 is no. It's the type of stuff that would get you kicked out of a first-year statistics class. You know what I mean? I just don't... But the problem is, and here's my interpretation of since interacting with Marxists... Here we go, we're going to find the secret bunker. Since interacting with Marxists quite a lot, my interpretation is this. They aren't actually... The Labour theory of value is unfalsifiable. They aren't testing the Labour theory of value. What they're doing is applying it, and they're looking for... Oh my god. Oh mate, Boone just took that guy out. They're looking for confirmatory evidence. The problem is that a lot of this evidence is very weak and could be consistent with any other number of theories. In order to eliminate other theories or rule out other theories, then you need to have a really aggressive research design, and that's just, again, not the case in 9 out of 10 of these things, and it's really dog shit, this evidence. You know, and it's a shame, because I think for me, Jesus Christ, this is fucking pretty serious little laser cannon, isn't it? Well, not as serious as my chainsaw. The problem for me as well is like, I'm a big fan of pluralism, and that means having all schools of thought, even Austrian economics. I might turn this down slightly. Even Austrian economics, right? But like Marxist economics, I want it to be on the curriculum. I want it to be on the curriculum. I want Marxist economists to be in the... if the bunker's power regulators are destroyed, its reactor core will overload in a matter of seconds with catastrophic results. Okay, won't chainsaw that then. I want... don't think I need any of that stuff. Energy cell, no, I don't use those, do I? Marxist economists should have a seat at the table. They should be in departments, they should be teaching their ideas, but they don't do themselves any favors with these really bad ideas. And I have showed some of this Marxist stuff to sort of open-minded mainstream economist friends of mine, and they dismiss it in a sentence because they're like, this is confusing correlation for causation. It's really that simple. Oh my god, you were hiding, weren't you? But Boone fucking took you out. So it's just, I don't think Marxists realise like why their ideas. Why am I limping? I don't think Marxists realise why their ideas have been rejected. If you ask them, they probably say something like, "Oh, you know, it's the ideas of the ruling class. It's all bourgeois." But it's like, well, is it bourgeois not to confuse correlation with causation? Because that's what you're doing. Like that is simply what you're doing, and you don't realise it because you believe the Labour theory of value before you actually look at the evidence. So the evidence again is only confirmatory. It's not testing it, and I don't think they're testing the idea. And I think that all of the quantitative tests that have been put forward, or almost all of them, there are a couple of exceptions, but almost all of them are just insufficient to prove what they want to prove. And that's why a mainstream economist is going to look at it and be like, I do not have time for this. Like you're saying to me, I want to teach heterodox stuff. I should teach heterodox stuff, that there's good stuff outside the mainstream, and then you show me a graph with a correlation with an obvious omitted variable like industry size, or you eyeball a trend going down of a variable that you've constructed, the aggregate rate of profit, that I'm not even sure is useful, that I'm not sure is robust, with no attempt at engaging with time series econometrics. How do you think we infer things from trends in the data over time? Do you think economists just look at things falling or rising and they're like, yes, this is happening because of X, Y, Z? No, it's much, much harder than that. And time series econometrics is infamously dodgy. I mean, I don't really like it. I wouldn't bother with it because I just think it's quite crap compared to like cross section where you've got lots and lots of people and you can sort of look at them over time in like panels or whatever. Yeah, so I mean, I appreciate your question. So your name's disappeared. Michelangelo. But I don't. Yeah, I'm sorry if I went off on a bit of a mad one. I know I was speaking quite quickly then, but yeah, it's just, I think, and another thing to emphasize. I mean, people are saying things in the chat which I'll get to in a second, but another thing to emphasize is like, again, this issue of the target audience. Like a lot of what I say in my videos is by manner of explanation, and I might communicate using an analogy or, you know, try and make a joke or something. I'm not saying the jokes are all good, although obviously they are. But like, the point is, I'm trying to make things stick in people's memories, and I'm trying to raise a question like, oh, what if Labour isn't the source of value? And that's not me. So if you try and, again, I haven't watched these videos, but if you like looked at like something I did where I used an analogy like the London Grammar concert, which I used to repair of 60. Oh shit, if only I'd looked at that earlier, I would have been able to upgrade. If you start to pick apart that analogy and you're like, well, this doesn't prove anything, it's like, no, you've missed the point. I'm trying to make people think and make up their own minds, but I just want to give people an example where it seems like capital might also produce surplus value. You know, and I do that a lot in my videos, so I think a lot of these people who are trying to score points, they're kind of like, they're misunderstanding what it means to do public communication, and they need to think about that because it's actually extremely hard. And if I had a criticism of the Labour theory of value video, or the theory of value video, everyone forgets the first half of it, it's not about the Labour theory of value, I would say that despite its best efforts, it is inherently has too many different theories and ideas in it to be effective public communication, which is why, although it did do very well and it has more views than I have subscribers even now, even 2 years later, it underperformed relative to some of my other videos because I just think it was too complicated, and so I might have split it into two or done it in a slightly different way if I did it again. Superior 4 attempts. Okay, so this is a puzzle, right? But yeah, I mean, people saying, yeah, why are Marxists so obsessed with the Labour theory of value? Like, it's really weird. It's like you've intertwined your politics with your economics and your morality. And so a threat to that worldview must be met quite aggressively because, like Nadim says, like, even if you believe Labour is the source of value, You could be like a Schumpeterian type where you're like, yeah, hell, capital exploits labor and it's damn fucking good for everyone because look at all the consumer goods we've got. Look at the growth in living standards, you know. Exploitation is good. You could do that. And that's, in a way, that's kind of a Marxist take, by the way. Marxist, I think, Marx himself, I think, meant something like that by exploitation, something less normatively loaded, although it's often misinterpreted by people on all sides. Or you could just not believe in the labour theory of value like me, but think that collective ownership, worker ownership, state, you know, public services are the way to go. It doesn't matter if labour's the source of value for that. So I think you've got to detach that politics as strongly from economics. Obviously there is a relationship between the two and there always will be. But to treat it as if your hopes for socialism rest on the labour theory of value, the labour theory of value is neither a necessary nor a sufficient condition for believing in socialism, right? But yeah, again, you know, it's a good question. And I will. It's one of those things I will revisit. And you know, I'll be honest with you guys. Like the wealth of nations, the political principles of political economy, which is just there. You know, what are the other big books? You know, Marshall's textbook. All of the classical books. Have I sat down and read Capital 1, 2, and 3, cover to cover? No, that's 3,000 pages. What I do is what I think most people should do, which is I dip into them, the relevant section as and when I need it, and then over time you kind of accrue the knowledge of it, and I think eventually, past a certain point, because it's such a hard book to understand, you reach a point where you're like, oh, actually, maybe I could sit down with this. But I think for a lot of people, that doesn't happen until they're a bit older. And that's fine. You shouldn't have to read one particular book or thinker to have a legitimate seat at the debate. That's ridiculous, because what you're telling me when you insist on that is that you can't defend your own ideas and summarize your own ideas in an accessible way and test them. And I just think a lot of Marxists are really way too into this, like, quoting Marx, reading Capital, like that confers intellectual credibility automatically, as opposed to it being one piece and an important piece. You know, I love Marx, hate Marxists, right? Certainly he was one of the most important thinkers in economics in history. I don't think anybody with sense can deny that, but I wouldn't take it too far and turn it into scripture, right? Anyway, let's do this fucking thing.